Hello there. What is going on, everyone? New editions and the pros and cons that come with it. We're talking about Age of Sigmar today, but the discussion isn't limited to Warhammer Age of Sigmar. It's also going to progress to Star Wars miniatures games as well. So I know a lot of you are probably here for Star Wars games, but don't worry. Stick with me because we are going to talk about this issue that's a very high profile issue right now with Warhammer and what it could mean for Star Wars games as well. So we're going to talk about all of this and why I don't think it's necessarily that much of a problem, but I also acknowledge that a lot of people are very concerned. So if you guys are new here to the channel, we do talk a lot about tabletop games. We talk about Star Wars tabletop games. We talk about miniatures games, board games as well. I'd love to have you stick around. We do giveaways. We have a $25 Amazon gift card giveaway that's running right now. To enter to win any of those, you just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. We run those for about every 2 weeks or so. I'm actually going to be announcing the winner of the latest giveaway at the end of today's video, so stay tuned. And another giveaway, we'll probably announce the next one starting tomorrow or the next day. So you have new giveaways running all the time. So, on to the topic of the video. Warhammer Age of Sigmar is, the fantasy version of Warhammer, although they do have Old World now, but it's a really cool sword and sorcery tabletop skirmish game. If you guys haven't already checked it out, they have amazing miniatures. I've talked about it a little bit, but I don't cover it that much, although I do play it from time to time. It's a game I really enjoy, but a lot of times I just focus on my own personal enjoyment of it and not necessarily trying to do battle reports all the time of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. They did announce that 4th edition is coming out. I believe, next month. So it's very, very soon. It's just around the corner. And this is, GW, Games Workshop, has definitely had a long history of coming out with new editions. And they do it in a way that's very, very cool, in my opinion, in that they support the old miniatures and just give you new rules to play your old stuff along with. Not everybody is super crazy about that because whenever there is change, there's usually a degree of uncomfortability while you're trying to adapt to new change. If you're a younger person, you're probably fine with change, but the older you get, the more and more difficult change can sometimes be. If you're in your 40s or somewhere around there and you've ever had to kind of, or even older, and if you had to get to, a new version of Windows or whatever, and, dealing with like, why'd they put the start menu over here? It was fine the way it was, I find myself sometimes, feeling that and trying to say, no, I've got to change. I've got to learn. I got to embrace the change. But it's a difficult thing for a lot of people. I feel it and I sympathize, but I think it's not all that bad. But there is some bad stuff. So one of the things that they have recently announced with 4th edition, while there are going to be some new rules, and some of them sound really exciting, there's changes to list building, there's color coding of rules, there's a lot of changes to like the turn structure, and a lot of things that seem like they're good quality of life changes. There's a big change to the Stormcast Eternals, which is like the biggest faction in Warhammer Age of Sigmar. They're often equated with the Space Marines of Warhammer Age of Sigmar. They're a pretty big faction. They have a lot of units, and a lot of their units are going away, and that has a lot of people really freaked out. So I just to give you a quick view. This is a quick highlight. It's 23 units have been identified as leaving the range with 4th edition. This initially set people off. This is a popular faction, and it's not just the Stormcast Eternals. The Skaven, Bone Splitters, Slaves to Darkness, and Beasts of Chaos, and a few others are also having miniatures that are leaving the range. But it's not as bad as it seems, but it still does seem pretty bad. And when I say it's not as bad as it seems, that doesn't mean that it's great either. So all of these units that we're seeing here, what does this mean? Well, these are going away from a certain point of view, like Obi-Wan Kenobi says, from a certain point of view. And I'll outline what they've said, and then I'll also explain this in Star Wars gaming terms for those of you who may not be as familiar with this game and some of the terminology. Basically, these are still going to be supported for a year. Once 4th edition comes out, they're going to be supported through summer of 2025. For competitive play. And that's an important keyword, for competitive play, which is kind of how, at least in Star Wars terms, that's how most people play. Now, I don't usually play competitive Age of Sigmar. but I don't go to tournaments at least. But usually when I'm playing, I usually like to play by established competitive rules for the most part. Although sometimes I'll play kind of casual as far as like the format. Like we'll play Contest of Generals as opposed to the latest Pitch Battles rule set. Sometimes we go back and forth when I play. But in other words, basically playing, if you think of X-Wing, are you playing standard, only the most recent stuff, or are you playing extended with some of the older stuff, right? So that's kind of the difference here. They have casual play, and then they have competitive play for Age of Sigmar. After summer of 2025, these models here are going to move to the casual play side of the house. Now, the important thing about that is they are going to have War Scrolls, and they'll be free to download for the first year. So, in other words, the rules for these are all going to be free. There will be rules for them. However, as far as like balance and stuff after the first year, they're not necessarily guaranteed to be supported beyond that. But for casual play, go for it, have nuts. For competitive play, maybe not so much. But now here's another reason it's not necessarily so bad. I would wager many of these units will be reprinted in 4th edition. They've already identified the Liberators, for example, as having a new model. And this is a pretty good thing. The Liberators had an old model. They're getting the new model here, and they've got that Thunderstrike armor and a more streamlined appearance. Actually, they look really good. If you guys have never held a Age of Sigmar miniature in your hand before, these are some of the best models on the planet, and they're so fun to paint. They're really, really cool. And the cool thing about this model is, I'm somebody who I have Liberators. I don't have to buy the new model. I can take the new rules for the Liberators and run them on the old Liberators. The bases are the same. It's just a new option. Now, this I think, explains kind of the meat and potatoes of why they make some of these changes. GW has a ton of models. There's a ton of models that exist, and over time, they get better and better and better and better. And so if you go back X number of years, you're going to compare them to old models and say, geez, these aren't that good. It's very similar to how Star Wars is and was under Fantasy Flight, and as they got better and better and better over time. If you looked at Imperial Assault's Stormtroopers, and then you looked at Star Wars Legion's Stormtroopers, you'd see, a big improvement. But then if you took Star Wars Legion's Stormtroopers and compared them to the hard plastic, Phase 2 clone troopers or whatever, you'd be like, wow, they got even better. And now AMG is reprinting the Stormtroopers as well as everything else that was in soft plastic and Legion into hard plastic, and presumably will be even better. The mock-up sculpts look like they're getting better and better and better. At a certain point, you can't really maintain the molds and the printing and the reprinting of older, sort of subpar models. You're going to have to make way for newer models. So that's kind of one of the things they're doing here. And so the cool thing is, anything that gets reprinted, you will not have to buy. It is your option to buy. You can still use your old stuff, and there'll be no problem with that. I say anything because there's probably an asterisk in there, because have been some cases historically where maybe a base size changed or something like that. But those are pretty few and far between. And I think those also dealt with going from Warhammer Fantasy into Age of Sigmar, so it's technically a whole new game at that point. But look, these are nice models. So here we have the old model on the far left. We have the new model in the middle, and then we have the Vindictors on the right, which also have that Thunderstrike armor. So they're kind of showcasing, this is the new kind of standard for armor for 3rd and 4th edition, whereas the older Legacy editions had theirs onto the far left. And again, that's a great model. Not too much wrong with that, but the shield type doesn't match up. The armor's slightly different, but they're still both Liberators. You can still run both of them. This is very cool, but there are also let me go back a little bit. There's a lot of other units in here. Now, the Liberators are the only units that have been mentioned so far as having reprints coming. It is definitely predicted that many more of these will be reprinted, and reprinted soon, largely because of the trailer that came out for Age of Sigmar. Featured some high-resolution CGI, awesome CGI stuff. It was a great trailer. But it featured a couple of these units in there, prosecutors, for example, looked like they were in there, so they're probably getting reprinted. Maybe paladins are probably going to be in there. I feel like maybe those Masters of the Sacrosanct or something like that. There were some mounted things going on in there. So there's definitely going to be some more reprints than what is going on. But if if this was most of your army, I have seen some people posting like, my entire army is phasing out of competitive play. Like, that's not fair. Then that I can definitely see that being a feels bad situation for some folks. What I think is going to happen is by the time these phase out, probably at least half of these will be announced as far as having like reprints that are coming or something similar. But there are going to be probably some that maybe take a year or two off. Maybe they had to go out for balance changes. Because Stormcast has a ton. And this same methodology applies to other factions. Just none of the other factions have as much as Stormcast and as much phasing out as Stormcast. So what does this necessarily mean for other games? So let's jump to, I'll use X-Wing for example. X-Wing's been out for a long time. Let's say the Empire, was getting a new faction, and they said, hey, okay, so here's the deal. We've got brand new models for X-Wing, new edition. Let's say we're going to do 4th edition of X-Wing. For new rules, everything's going to be supported for the first year, but then for competitive play or for standard, eventually it's only going to be the stuff that we have new prints of. Let's say, hey, we do have new TIE fighters coming out. They're going to look way better. They're going to have more detail. You can still use your old TIE fighters. We have new models of TIE fighter coming out. We are also phasing out the Lambda shuttle because that model is old. We'll probably reprint it eventually, but until we get around to it, after a year, it's going to be phasing out of tournament play. But you can still play it, and it'll still be supported for casual play, and then updated if really need be, if it gets grossly out of balance. But and that's kind of what's happening here for Age of Sigmar. I feel like, now we're going to talk about Star Wars for a minute. I feel like this methodology is not as bad as it seems for most people. And the reason I say that is a lot of this stuff will be reprinted. A lot of your armies you'll be able to still use. A lot of people that I know that play tabletop games usually don't have a very static, like, I have only these units, and if there's any change to my army, I can't play anymore. A lot of people have excess stuff. I personally have enough Stormcast to run like 2.5 armies or so. Maybe even 3, depending on how the new rules allow me to build them. So I've definitely got some, because I'm going to lose a couple of items. Like, I'm going to lose potentially access to, in competitive play, for my prosecutors, paladins, not my liberators. They're going to be okay, and then sequitors too, which is that's a couple of battle line units that I'm going to lose access to, which is definitely a cause for concern. Hopefully hopefully some, if not many of these will get reprinted, and we can go from there. But there's also hero units in here. One thing that does kind of annoy me with Age of Sigmar is they just had a big sale for like a new special mage sculpt. And if you spent $140 or so on their store, you'd get the new mage sculpt. Problem is, it was like say goodbye, buy all the rest of this stuff, say goodbye to 3rd edition, and buy all this stuff. And now that sale is over, because some of these units that are going away, like the Errant Questor and Gavriel Sureheart, for example, I almost bought. I was like, hey, I don't have some of these heroes, and I want some more of these hero units. Let me go ahead and buy those and get this free miniature. I thought about this, and I had stuff added to my cart, and I was like, sometimes it's fun to window shop online. I would probably be a little more annoyed if I had just purchased these things, and then before they even ship, I get the notice, oh, that stuff that you already bought, that we've already billed your credit card for, that we are sending out a shipping notice now. Yeah, by the way, that's by the time you get it, it's going to be already on the chopping block, so it's got a year left. Like I would have more of a feels bad if that were the case. So I definitely get it that some people are not happy about this, especially not knowing which of these units are going to get reprinted. That's the problem. That's where it gets a little crazy. So we're going to have to wait and see. Look, I get it. I feel like other games could follow in this model with a few minor changes. One of those changes could easily be that that they could announce what's getting reprinted with the whole list. Let's go back to this list here. we only know of one unit specifically that's getting reprinted on here. There's a lot of other assumptions that we can make, but that's the only one that we know of that's going to actually stay legal out of this 23, so it actually turns out to be like 22. I feel like they probably could have been a little more forthcoming about this to ease concerns a little bit, and I know you don't want to announce too many things ahead of time, other than saying, you know, some of these will be reprinted. I'm like, okay, well, you know, what's that supposed to, like, you're almost deliberately, you know, making people panic at a certain point. So I definitely get it, but at the same time, I'm also very kind of excited to see what 4th edition brings, because all of the units, there's a lot more Stormcast than this. So, you know, just for example, they have like probably at least 3 or 4 times this many units available to them, not to mention all the dragons and all that other stuff. So there's a ton of Stormcast Eternals. So this doesn't represent the majority of the faction at all, but it's still a significant chunk of it that is potentially going away. I'm really excited to see what everything else can do. Most of my Stormcast are not on here. It's only a couple of the units that I have that are on here. So think about it, if you had every single unit in the Empire and you were losing like four ships, you know, from the Empire. Like you were losing TIE fighters, you were losing, if we're talking X-Wing, if you were losing TIE fighters, Lambda shuttles, TIE interceptors, and TIE defenders, and you knew TIE fighters were being reprinted, and you had strong suspicions that interceptors were next, and then you had to wait and see about the other two. That's kind of where this is right now. But if you flew mostly TIE fighters and TIE interceptors, or if you flew exclusively interceptors and a Lambda shuttle, you know, then you would be really upset. And that's kind of where this is for GW and Age of Sigmar. It's pretty interesting. How many of you, I have some questions for you guys. How many of you play Age of Sigmar, and how many of you are excited about new editions? What do you think this could, do you think like this could have impact with other games and how they do new editions? And what do you want to see GW do differently in the future? Let me know down in the comments section below. I want to thank you all so much for hanging out with me today. Big thanks to all of my patrons. You guys are amazing. Thanks to everybody who entered to win all of the latest giveaways. Speaking of giveaways, we do have a winner to announce. So today's winner for the $25 Amazon gift card giveaway that you can put towards the gaming expansion of your choice is going to be the Thought Donor. Congratulations. Make sure you just shoot me an email at mailcrabbok@gmail.com, or you can find that on the back end of my channel. We'll get you all squared away. If you did not win, don't worry. We're going to be announcing the next giveaway soon. So to enter to win any of those, you just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. That is going to do it for today. Again, thank you so much for watching. Again, thank you to the patrons. You guys are superstars and help make this channel possible. May the force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. Always wash your socks. Have a great day.